Are we losing our next generation? In a sense, it's a rhetorical question, and the answer is yes. Okay, end of talk. Just a little introduction to the topic. Maybe I'll ask a question, all right? And the question is, besides food, what do church leaders talk and think about most often? And the answer is, okay, I'm not even waiting for your answer, but the answer is reaching out and nurturing the next generation. I mean, I've been in so many groups and people have been talking about next generation ministries. I was going to say ad nauseum, but that's not quite the right word. But people have been talking about it over and over and over, obviously reflecting a concern which is on many of our hearts. But, okay, here is the reality and here is the concern. Because I am also hearing that we need to up our evangelistic efforts. We need to bring them in. But the thing is, as we are inviting them in by the front door, at the same time they are leaving by the back door. And I think that is the concern. In case you have not realized that, and in case you're not paying attention to that, please pay attention to the reality. And I think it's important for us to be amongst those who are asking the question, why are we losing them? And asking, who is guarding the back door? Right? So I think these are important things that we need to be paying attention to. American study, this is not 2011, it was a mistake, 2007. This book by David Kinnaman and Gabe Lyons, Unchristian, it's really a survey of the non-Christians and what they think about the church. And the findings are not very, very pretty, okay? A couple of years later, David Kinnaman, he wrote that book, You Lost Me, and this time he's doing research on those who are in the church, or from the church. And this is what he writes. It feels as if they are reading from a script. Young adults describe their individual faith journeys in startling similar language. Most of the stories include significant disengagement from church and sometimes from Christianity altogether. It is not just dropping out that they have in common. Many young people who grew up in church and have since dropped out do not hesitate to place blame, and the blame is at the church. And I think that's something that we really, really need to think through a little bit. And we need to ask the question, what are reasons that the unchurched and the young adults give for dropping out of the church? Now, this is an American study, and I have the book here, but you can get access to the book readily. So I'm not going to answer your questions about what access, what alienation, and what authority is, but these are all the factors according to that study, the North American study, that have contributed to the dropout. The other word that they use is disconnections, and the words that have been used to describe overprotective, shallow, anti-science, repressive, exclusive, and doubtless. Doubtless meaning we don't allow people to doubt. Now, that's an American study. You can draw the parallels. There will be some, obviously it's not going to be identical, but you will find some parallels between them. But even in Singapore, the recent newspaper report, Sunday Times no less, youth in Singapore shunning religion. Now, that article is readily available. You just Google search, you can find that. But the tagline over there, reasons put forward for trend include countries' relative stability and influence of liberal ideologies. Now, that doesn't tell you the whole story, and obviously it's also, you also have to remember that it's not just Christian faith that they are leaving. They're also leaving the mosque, they're also leaving the Buddhist temple, etc., etc. So it's across the board. Traditional institutions, including families, religious institutions, including families, are definitely targets of people wanting to leave. Okay, so it's kind of natural. If there's something for you to push back, and that has been the dominant, it's very, very natural for us to be expecting that to happen. If you were the minority, it's unlikely you'll be oppressed, put it that way, okay? It's unlikely that you will be the target of oppression. Sorry, let me just rephrase. quite right. It's unlikely that people will target you as this horrible thing that we need to run away from, which is really what the church is facing right now. If I didn't get it right, you work it out yourselves, okay? So there are tensions. There are tensions because of globalization. Globalization doesn't affect just something up in the sky. It affects your everyday life, right? So there's a tension between the global and the local, but there are more tensions. There are also the geographical spaces that we inhabit. There are also the digital spaces that we inhabit. There are tensions, and there are ecosystems that are slowly being formed. The socio and psycho, what is happening outside in the social world also affects who we are as a person. That's why, if you ever hear people say, life now is the same as then, it's not true, because post 1995, with the introduction of internet, it's really changed the whole way we communicate. And I think that has been a significant game changer. And to say that, life now and life then, same, no, it's not, okay? It's very significantly different. There are also pull factors, things that are pulling people out of the church, that are also things that are happening in the church that are pushing people out. And that is not the sum total, but these are certainly factors that we need to pay attention to. Okay, not just to think of just one single factor. I've spoken to quite a few people recently, youth leaders, etc. And one of the things that I have said to some of them is there is no silver bullet solution. There's no one single silver bullet solution. So please don't look for that one thing that's going to make the difference. Okay. So what's happening in the church and what's happening in the world? Now, I think in the publicity, it talked about the role of stories, rituals, and relationships in discipleship. And let me just explain a little bit what I'm trying to say in this, okay? So a couple of years ago, I was in India. I was in Hyderabad. I was in the OM bookstore, right? And it's a wonderful big store, and there was a new book that I picked up. And the title is Formational Children's Ministry. And what you see here is the subtitle, which you can hardly see over here. And the subtitle says, Shaping Children Using Story, Ritual, and Relationship. Now, I have a little bit more elaboration in the handout on those 3 points, so I'm not going to cover that. Those details are there for you to go through. But as I read the book, and I went through the book, I said, finally somebody got it, right? Finally somebody got it. Somebody understands that formation is not through a program. You just do a program, you come for 6 weeks, 10 weeks, 1-2 years, and that's it, QED. It doesn't work that way, right? Putting people through programs per se is not going to be the big thing, okay? There are things within the program, obviously, but what is really significant, and I thought, wow, this person finally got it, through story, through rituals, and through relationships. And I said, wow, this really makes sense to me. So if you look at a young boy, for example, right, and this is a kid, and if you want to shape his values, his worldview, it is really through a combination of stories and narratives that he listens to and lives out. Listens to and lives out. Okay, there's two different things, but it's more than just what you hear. Secondly, rituals, the everyday habit forming sort of things. Now, many of us, we think rituals are, these high church sort of things, and they are, okay? And those are very significant. Sometimes they have such a tremendous impact. All your life, you'll always remember that point of time. We call them rites of passage, right? But rituals are very significant. But beyond just that traditional definition, rituals are also your everyday things that you do. When you wake up in the morning, what's the first ritual that you perform? You check your phone. Not bangsai. It used to be bangsai, but it's not anymore, right? The first thing that you do, you get your coffee, the first thing you just reach out for your phone, right? So that is a ritual. And then your relationships that you form, right? So in church, stories, rituals, relationships. Now, what, and I wrote this in some article that I wrote. I said, what Beckwith highlights here, Ivy Beckwith, the author of that book, is of critical importance. Humans live by story. They order their lives through habitual ritualistic behavior, and they are highly relational beings. Shaping children's hearts and minds in Christian discipleship will thus require church communities and families to understand the dynamics of formation and be actively involved in the process of Christian nurture through the use of story, rituals, and relationships. But wait. That is the thing that I'm trying to be talking about. See, I'm not really here to say to you, okay, this is how we do stories, this is how we do rituals, and this is how we do relationships. I'm saying to you that the world is doing it much, much, much better. Okay, the world is doing it so much better. So given the intensity of global media flows, coupled with the high levels of connectivity and consumption choices, identities and values and worldviews are no longer merely shaped within the bounds of the home, of the church and the local community. Now, think about that, okay? I'm going to revisit this again, this formula. Many of us, our basic magic bullet formula for Christian formation is we will outsource it to the Sunday school. How many hours do our children get Christian education? Maybe an hour or two, right? Max. Okay, so we outsource it to the Sunday school, and Sunday school is saying, no. We are too busy. We need to outsource this to some other organization, right? Scripture Union or whatever, right? And we are kind of passing the buck around. And at the same time, what is happening is that the world is enjoying a field day because they're very, very good in what they're doing in all those things that I just talked about, that Ivy Beckwith just underlined and underscored for us. Okay, now, this is a book, 2002, by James Thayer, okay? And this is a rather old book because we are 10 years down, and by the time you get your book in print, it's already like 3 years after you wrote it initially, right? So our kids are living in an entirely different, much more complex, and I want to emphasize that. They live in a much more complex environment than we ever would have imagined in our age. The rules and the risks have changed radically, and many of us have been very slow to grasp the difference. Our kids today inhabit an environment which is saturated and shaped by a complex mediascape that envelops and bombards them. Remember this book, 2002, is pre-social media. It's like Internet 1.0, Web 1.0 kind of generation, right? And the point is, the influence through the media is very, very big, to the point that media is now playing the parenting role, okay? I'm going to skip this. I think it's in your handout, so I'm just going to skip it very, very quickly. Another study, this is a 1995 study. 95, long time ago. Jeffrey Arnett, he's a big name in media study, adolescents' use of media for self-socialization, 95, okay. Now, this is what he says, okay? Our youth use media for these reasons: for entertainment, for coping reasons, for identity formation, for youth culture identification, for high sensation. Kind of like, most of us, my age, we don't really like to do bungee jumping too much, okay, because I don't need the adrenaline rush. But I think, it's very different if you're a lot younger, okay? So high sensation, whatever that high is, and then for other reasons. Now, if you think about that, pre-internet, media is already doing its thing. What about post-internet? Okay, the level of sophistication and the use is just way above what Arnett could even think about back in 1995 when he wrote that. Okay, so basically what he's also saying in his study, okay, it kind of makes a lot of sense. Media and friends make a lot more impact than parents in our young people's lives. I don't think any of you who are youth workers are surprised at this finding, okay? But this is something that you can quote, and this is something that you can use. Now, basically, what is the world that we are experiencing? The world that we are experiencing, particularly with media, and it's not just media. I'm not going to say that media is the only problem, okay? Because remember I said earlier on, it's the pull factor, it's also the push factor. It's what's happening outside, it's also what's happening inside that we need to pay attention to. So I'm just looking at the outside at the moment. The world that we're experiencing it now is more connected, more diverse, is more media saturated, is more pluralistic. Please note this, it's not going to change. Don't think of the good old days when things were so much more simple, because the good old days will not come back. This is the world that we are living in. Let's get to grips with it, and let's get on and ask how do we move on, okay? And it is also a world that is full of instructors, entertainers, friends, counselors, storytellers, peddlers, playmates, and perverts, and a whole range of other roles that are out there, okay? Remember, story, rituals, relationships, right? And as you are seeing all this, what does it mean? Okay, how does it play itself? I mean, I'm just allowing you to allow your imaginations to fill in the blanks. Stories, what sort of stories are they hearing? What sort of rituals are they participating in on an everyday? Because every day is, you see, I'm more concerned about everyday gambling. I'm not very concerned about Marina Bay Sands and RWS for the average person, because it's a one-off sort of experience. But I'm more worried about online gambling, because that could be an everyday habit-forming sort of thing. Can you see the distinction? There is a big distinction between everyday formational activities and the one-off activity that you do. Right? So this is what I'm talking about. This is the world that they are filled with. In an age of lost innocence, those who do not know the Lord, those who do not honor the Lord, these have become the heroes, the role models, the mentors, and they have a big stake in shaping the hearts and the minds and the identities of the next generation. Of course, not just them, it's also us. To the extent that we are connected, it's also us. Okay? Those of us who are a bit older. So, I kind of like this picture. While the voice of Christ calls us to follow him, this is really a discipleship thing that I'm trying to bring across to us. While the voice of Christ calls us to follow him, while the hands of Christ beats the drum and says, sway to my drum beat. Okay, visually, I want you to capture this is what's happening in the world today. All right, this is what the multiple overlays, the different other sound bites, the other stories beyond your Sunday input. That is what is happening. Basically, simple conclusion. We live in a world where there is competition. Okay, we need to realize that as we are raising our young people, we are raising them not in a vacuum of church. There's no such thing as a sort of a very sanitized from the church, from the home to the school to the church, all very clean, all very sanitized. Okay, Dettol has its limitations in this world. Please realize that while we are saying what we are saying to our children as it relates to Christian faith and the Bible, that's what they are experiencing. I wish you could hear the sound. I can hear the sound. I can hear the sound as I'm looking at that. Okay, but let that impact your minds, because that's that's basically what is happening in the world today. Jean-Jacques Arnaud, very famous film director, he once wrote, and I love this quotation, "I want my images to carry an emotion you can hardly describe with words. They ring a secret bell in your heart, and those are the bells I love to ring." The reason why I share this quotation is because many of us want to be missionaries for the Lord. We want to reach out to our young people. We want to reach out to whoever is around us. But remember, people who are non-Christians, who have very, very great professions, influential professions, they also have a vision. And they also have a life goal. It's also to reach out to people and to move you in places that you didn't even realize you had. Okay, so and you didn't even realize you have emotions. So these are creators with a lot of a influential power in their hands, in their craft, to make a difference in the lives of people. So what is ringing the secret bells of your heart? You see, these are all the challenges for this generation. I had a conversation with a media professional, and I love that conversation. He said, it is not a media platform until it builds habits. Now, that really, really made me sit up and think. It is not a media platform until it builds habits. Those who are in media have a mission, and they know how to do it well. They know it's not just about the one-off, it's about sticky, viral, it's about you wanting to go back again and again and again and again. How we wish our Sunday schools were like that. And our children are dying to go back again and again and again and get lost in the wonder of God. They are lost in the wonder of something else. It is not a media platform until it builds habits. So, this very famous Nigerian proverb. It takes a whole village to raise a child. Lovely, often quoted so many times. I need to add another part to it. In this digital global village, who is raising your child? And I can tell you, it's not one other person. It's a multitude of the other things that you saw that inhabit our world today. Okay. It takes a whole village to raise a child. In this global village, who is raising your child? All right. So it's really in this new world that habits of the mind, habits of the heart are shaped and they're developed. Again, coming back to this picture, right? See, initially I kind of set you up because I said, wow, this magic formula, this book has all the nice answers. But really what I was trying to say to you all is, if as you are doing that, remember the competition. Remember the competition. Which stories are shaping this child's mind and heart? Which rituals? Which relationships? Remember, when people start investing money in something, it's very hard for you to detach. When you start investing emotions and allegiance and affections in something else, that's what the Bible calls idolatry. It's a simple, simple word. Idolatry, when you love that much, 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 much more, when you're pursuing it, when you're always wanting to be first thing in the morning, you're thinking of, right? In the old days within the church, it would be, our fathers and grandfathers, they would be first thing and praying, and, they model beautiful devotion. It's not the same anymore. I did an interesting question to Anglican pastors and a few other pastors also. And I said, what's the first thing that you do? First instinct in the morning. When you get up in the morning, what's the first thing that you have on your heart? Of course, we all expect prayer, right? But actually, it's not different from many of us. Check WhatsApp, check SMS, right? So so that's interesting. It's something for us to think about. What are the stories and rituals and relationships that are shaping us? How and what is shaping this generation? Okay, just very, very quickly. Screen Asia. What and how What ritual, stories, and relationships? Okay, so it's not just the impact of the media and the worldviews. It's also the lived out narratives, rituals, and stories, and relationships within wherever you are. And so I wanted to extend beyond the media world, because that's not the only world that they live in. What stories, what rituals, and what relationships are they experiencing? In school, what stories, what rituals, what relationships are they experiencing? Aspirations, what stories, what rituals, and what relationships. One of the findings in the study that I did, I interviewed 14, they're either youth pastors or leaders of Christian youth organizations in Singapore. And one of the big things, which you all know already, is studies. Super overconsumed by studies. And one of the big painful cries, I think Gwen mentioned, I've been meeting with the youth leaders. The big cries I'm hearing from them include parents, they're kind of shell-shocked. Youth leaders are shell-shocked that parents are putting schoolwork and life interests before God, before church, before going to Sunday school, before waking up. And that, to me, I'm hearing repeated people saying that to me, okay? So I'm concerned. Again, your everyday, your stories, rituals, and relationships. So the thing is, it's not just what is happening in the world, which is really what my heavy emphasis has been in this talk. Remember, I'm only given 45 minutes. I have a lot to say, okay? But what is happening within the church is also a big, fat concern. If you look at this list, some of the concerns, I've captured quite a few of them in there too. That's the talking point for you and your church leaders. Okay, I'm going to end with a little quotation, okay? And this is something that you can quote me on, because it's from me, okay? And I say to my students all the time that our lives, we need to think of our lives as being bracketed by the memories of our past and the imaginations of the future. We are here. Behind us are our memories. They can be positive, they can be negative. In front of us are the imaginations of the future. They could be negative, they could be positive. So that's where you are, the memories of the past, okay, that's where you are. And your imaginations for the future. Your imaginations could take you to a dark place. And I'm thinking, I see this so often. Our young people grew up to love the Lord. The wonderful children's ministry did such a great job. And somewhere beyond the children's ministry, something happened. The imaginations of the future shaped our young people in a way that broke our hearts as parents, as pastors, as youth pastors. It could be the other way around. Okay, it could be the other way around. Somebody coming from a very, very broken situation, and something sown in the imaginations of the young people through the stories, rituals, and relationships. Something made a difference and turned that person around so that the person is really liberated. Okay, the question is, in a world of change and global connectivity, how will your youth and children's ministry shape the imaginations and the memories of the next generation for the Lord? I pretty much want to leave that with you. What are the compelling narratives, rituals, and relationships that will draw them and keep them with the Lord?